Good evening and welcome to another edition of Wrestling Roundtable Radio here on Blog Talk Radio. The number to call in is 347-857-4647. And of course, we want you to visit WrestlingRoundtable.com. There were lots of updates. I updated the news. Seems the big stories in the wrestling and MMA world were a lot of legalities in the past week. Lots of lawsuits. Alleged rape by Lawrence Taylor, who headlined WrestleMania 11. Statutory, of course. Don King trying to stop Shine Fights from Ricardo Mayorga's MMA debut, supposed to have taken place Saturday. We'll see if that goes down or not. Triple H and Stephanie have a bus being custom built for them, and that got impounded. Find out about that in the news section. And lots of other legalities, including Hogan suing the company that was supposed to represent him. Of course, we've also got recaps. Bill Treadway recapped Raw from last night, which we will talk about later on. And Zach Fellows recapped SmackDown this past Friday. Also uploaded the entire show 43, which covered UFC heavyweights, and our pick 3 from the Big 3 topic, which we will get some more panelists follow up on. And a new feature, the poll. Poll questions now on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Lastly, but not least, Pro Wrestling Respect 3 has been officially announced. Going to be taking place Sunday, June 6th at Burlington, New Jersey's National Guard Armory once again. You can get more information on that and tickets at WrestlingRoundtable.com or ProWrestlingRespect.com. And introducing the panel for this week, Lawrence Haber. Hello, Lawrence.
Hey, Eric and fans.
Will Vafides. Hello, Will.
What's up, everybody? Sorry I couldn't be here last week. I was in a very sick state of mind, but I am back. And I'd like to thank all of the Wrestling Roundtable fans for giving me my birthday wishes.
Happy birthday, Will, and glad to have you back and healthier. Like I joked about at the beginning of the show last week, I think the few of the panelists that made it on were the only non-sick people in the entire Northeast last week, but I think everyone's recovered a little bit. Also on the line, returning is Sal Rendazzo. Hello, Sal.
Hey, Eric, everybody. How's it going?
I'll tell you how's it going. You're not the only Italian here this week, because making his first roundtable appearance all season for the first time this year, Brett Midge Simonello. Hello, Midge.
Hey, how's everybody doing there?
We haven't heard from you all year. You had actually a pretty funny story about WrestleMania, which you were supposed to go to. We hope to have had you on to talk about it, but you told me earlier that you didn't even make it. What happened?
All right. Well, let's get to the moral of the story here. Don't trust your family. I had the tickets to WrestleMania months and months ago. Bought tickets, going out to Arizona, seeing my buddy, taking his kids. We're going. My cousin works for JetBlue. He says, don't buy a ticket. I get you one real cheap, no problem. So I get a $100 ticket going out of JFK, back and forth, no problem. I go out Friday night. I stay over his house. Saturday morning, we go to the airport. I spend the entire day in JFK because the airline ticket was a standby ticket. I missed 3 flights going out of there. And when I tried to buy a ticket for Sunday morning, it was over $1,000. So, yeah, didn't make it out to Arizona. Was not a very happy person WrestleMania weekend.
That sounds almost as annoying as the echo from your phone right now.
Yeah.
Did that one?
Yeah, some sort of echo, but I guess maybe it's on Blog Talk Radio's end, people. I can't control that. But we wanted to get some of your thoughts on some of the latest WWE shows, specifically WrestleMania and Extreme Rules, the big pay-per-views. Some input on that, Brett?
Well, I was convinced to watch WrestleMania with, a 12-pack and pizza pies, but I did get to see it. Really, my favorite matches were the first 3. I know nobody really here likes The Miz and Show, but I do.
How do you know that?
I know all.
Wow.
What's taller, the Empire State Building or the ancient pyramid of Cheops?
The Empire State Building. Just because it's in New York, and everything in New York is better than any other place. But anyway, the triple threat with Rhodes, Orton, and DiBiase, I actually enjoyed it, except everything except for Cody's orange, flesh-colored tights and white boots. That was a little rough to watch.
That was my favorite.
The Money in the Bank, I enjoyed very much how they threw little Evan Bourne's tiny body around the ring and made him look foolish. McMahon and Bret Hart, pretty much was all into that until the bell rang and the old men got into the little fight, which kind of worries me for next week with the Miz and Bret Hart.
Assuming it actually happens.
Assuming it actually happens. Skipping past all the rest of it, down to Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, those two fucking guys are nuts. They really, they deliver. As much as people say it was an overrated match from 25, I think this one pretty much took up all the hype, and it lived up to it.
Agreed. I really like that match. And, yeah, the one from last year was good, but I think this one was the real match they were waiting to have, so to speak.
I'll tell you my favorite part about that match is when Shawn Michaels is on his knees, and he's pulling up the Undertaker. Undertaker's giving him a look like, what are you doing? And then he smacks the shit out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a wrestling move. It's the best part about the match.
Moving on to Extreme Rules a month later. What'd you think?
A forgettable pay-per-view. Very forgettable pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
Best part about, let's see, we got JTD and Shad, which was basically a rerun of Stone Cold and Savio Vega from In Your House, 50 years ago, right? With the whole let me carry him on his back and tap the back of the corner and then win at the end?
Yes, that was the only other strap match in history. That's correct.
And then, let's see, Swagger and Orton, whatever. Sheamus, I hate Sheamus with a passion. Passionately. Hate his guts. It might be because he's Irish, I'm not sure. Edge and Jericho was probably the only really thing that I enjoyed. Oh, no, CM Punk and Mysterio. I like when they go at it. CM Punk, I got to admit, with you ROH guys, has definitely lived up to his potential. And you guys saying, why doesn't he do the straight edge stuff? Why doesn't he do the straight edge stuff? Well, he finally does, and I'd have to say you guys are right about it.
Well, that is pretty much what he built his name on. Obviously, he started out in the Midwest, and Ring of Honor being the biggest indie in the country even back then, what really put him over the top was the feud with Raven, which was custom made for the druggy versus straight edge sort of stuff they were going, and it was really good. And the only thing that's a shame about him doing it now, as opposed to it just being in the background back then, is before it went to PG, was when they restarted the fake ECW, and they had the Sandman and Balls Mahoney and Rob Van Dam and those sort of guys that's a big part of their personalities. Punk really could have played off that well, but all the same, he's really winning a lot of fans right now.
Yeah.
Last night was Monday Night Raw, and the big angle, of course, was Vicky Guerrero being brought in what may have been a one-night-only GM. I guess the ending was a little open-ended. Cutting off the guest host program, so to speak, although that's continuing next week with Buzz Aldrin. What'd you guys think of Raw last night, Lawrence?
I think they are desperately trying to salvage Edge at this point in any way possible, and using all the greatest hits from his heel run to do damage control. But that being said, they're doing the right thing by him and by Orton, and I don't have many complaints with the direction at this point. They're in a stopgap mode with Batista, and they certainly can't pull the trigger on Orton in the title right now. So it's that period between WrestleMania and SummerSlam where we just patiently wait for something interesting to happen.
Speaking of Randy Orton, I have a new nickname for him instead of the Viper. What if they just used the adjective Randy? He'd be Randy Orton. Party for one. Sal?
Party for one, indeed. As far as Vicky Guerrero, it's something different for her. They really weren't using her that much on SmackDown, and I kind of enjoyed her when she was in her GM role. I don't really buy the way they brought her back into it, but to me the most intriguing part of Raw is the Batista-Cena storyline, because for the first time in ever, I'm just starting to care about Batista. And now it looks like he might be on his way out, which is kind of disappointing to me, because I think this is the most interesting he's ever been the last few months. So I'm hoping that something develops there and that he sticks around, because I think he's the most inspired that he's ever been.
Will, what do you think? And remember, you don't get a commission for every time you say you know.
I know. So I thought it was a good Raw. I think they're definitely building up Orton and Edge as a feud. Again, the spotlight gimmick, I think, is one of the best gimmicks that's out there in wrestling right now. The fact that everything just shuts off and the light just comes out on him, it's a great way to do it. I like the I Quit match idea. You know, that's definitely going to end the feud between the two. They pretty much said this is going to be it. So, and they introduced Bret Hart back into the storyline. So we'll be seeing Bret Hart next week on Raw, facing The Miz. So that's going to be a good. It probably won't happen, but it'll be interesting. They're finally putting the U.S. title, actually making it important again. I thought it was a good Raw, but again, this is like the slow time, for wrestling. It's not much. Everybody's, doing other things.
Bret Hart contending for the U.S. title that he last held almost 11 years ago in WCW. Bret, do you expect Bret to actually go through with this?
And I hope not.
If WrestleMania is any indication, you hope not?
Yeah, if WrestleMania is any indication. I mean, The Miz is one of the best workers on the roster, so if anybody can pull it off, he can. But not really looking forward to seeing one of my heroes wind up like Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan and make a laughing stock out of themselves.
310, you're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Your name and location.
Hey, what's up? This is Chris calling out of Los Angeles.
Welcome from Los Angeles, Chris. Did you catch Raw last night, and if so, what'd you think?
I couldn't get with Raw last night. It was just a bunch of, the same old stuff. I really didn't like the Flavor Flav stuff at all.
What's the matter with you?
It was stupid, man. It's just like a lot of stupid shit, I don't know. If they didn't try before, now that, TNA, I'm not saying that they tried when they had competition with TNA, but it's just like I just don't think we're going to get any quality shows from Raw, for a while,
Well, WrestleMania was definitely a quality show, at least in terms of the major matches, and you touched on them before, Brett, and one of them was the Shawn Michaels Undertaker match that we particularly liked, but we used that as a springboard to talk about Shawn Michaels on one of our latest shows and give a retrospective look, I guess it would be now. Everyone seems to think, Shawn Michaels is telling the truth this time. He's really going to stay retired. Yeah, fucking right. Not saying he's going to come back at a full-time basis, but whether it's a WrestleMania or a pay-per-view, one shot here and there, he'll come back and do a big match. These guys just can't let it go. Not that it's a bad thing. Shawn Michaels, of all these guys who's stuck around, is definitely the most capable of delivering these matches. For a guy who's been wrestling over 20 years, definitely can't be doing it too much longer, but I still think there's some gas left in the tank and will be there when he recharges his batteries. Jay, Chris, Rod, and myself gave our thoughts on Shawn Michaels and his moments in his career that stood out to us, our favorite matches and moments. So we wanted to get some of your opinions as well. We'll go to the panel first and then to calls. So, Lawrence, what were some moments that stood out when you look back at Shawn Michaels?
I define my view of Michaels by the last 8 years of his career and what he's managed to do, and having one of the most prolific Renaissance periods of any wrestler that I've seen this side of Ric Flair. And I think the kickoff to that was the match with Triple H at SummerSlam in 2002, which is one of, I think, the greatest pay-per-views of all time as well. And what he managed to do really drew me in. The people I was watching with it at the time were drawn in, and they weren't even wrestling fans, by the story and how well he delivered it. And that was the beginning of the character that he became, after the Heartbreak Kid, which was this kind of born-again, no pun intended, individual.
Oh, definitely intended.
Yeah, very much intended, but not when I said it. It was just a slip of the tongue. That's what she said. And it was just that match was a defining of what he was going to accomplish in the next few years. And certainly I feel that the Shawn Michaels of the millennium, of the 2000s, surpassed what he had accomplished in his initial run, which was between the ladder match, the Iron Man match, and just who he was and what he stood for. It's really remarkable to think that the older Shawn Michaels was able to pull off the kind of quality consistently year after year and with so many different people, and that was the match that really stood out in hindsight to me.
I actually feel the opposite. Not to say that this run hasn't been great. but I still think it's a baby step below how good he was in the mid-'90s between '96 and '98 when he retired. And the reason I say that is because when I look back at his title reign, his initial one from when he won it from Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12, most of those defenses, even the ones on Raw, I can still remember, and they stand the test of time as being classics, whereas at least in the first year or so when he came back, it was pretty hit and miss. And yeah, we remember the classics, which of course that one with SummerSlam 2002 was against Triple H. The great part about that match was the built-in psychology, by the way, because obviously Michaels had been gone pretty much off TV for most of that time. Yeah, he came back as the commissioner here and there and whatnot, but the built-in psychology of that match that was so great and they built on it so well was, of course, his back injury. Every little move, even a standard backbreaker, became important, especially with the way he sold it, and that was brilliant. Now, the reason I say that he was a baby step below what he was in '96 is because he had a lot of matches, specifically in '03, that a lot of people don't really remember. No one particularly remembers the match that he had with Van Dam on Raw after he won the big gold belt. No one really remembers when he fought Orton and Batista in '03, or Goldberg for that matter. And I think the Shawn Michaels from '96, had he been doing the same, would have made all those memorable classics. But maybe that's just a sign of the times and not Michaels or his opponents. I don't know. I just feel like maybe it's because I was a bigger fan of his in '96 that it stands out a little more to me.
I think he was always a year or two ahead of all the other people on the roster, maybe even in wrestling. And so that kind of speaks to your point. Maybe things didn't catch up with him. A lot of people always say, what would he have been in the Attitude Era, where he could have stretched a little bit more with his character as far as what he was doing.
For, if only he had fought Stone Cold when Austin was really super hot and Michaels
and
was
healthy,
around, or The Rock.
Yeah, but I also think it's not apples to apples, because to me, I think a metaphor for it's like comparing the Beatles to the Beatles as solo artists. You know, you're not going to say John Lennon is better than John Lennon and the Beatles. There's a Shawn Michaels that was in the Rockers and did what he did there, and then had his solo run and had great matches with Bret Hart and great matches as an upper mid-carder to a main eventer. And then there's the Shawn Michaels who had to change his style to suit his injuries, his age, and to suit the change of the way the company presents itself. Whereas in the 90s he was a little bit edgier. In the millennium he had to reel it in because things became more PG, and he had to act like an old guard veteran wrestler as opposed to a young upstart. So I can't say one way or another that I prefer either thing. But I can say that Triple H match is the pivot point for his career, and it represents a great work of art to me, where he really defined what he was and what he was going to be.
I don't know if you could say that a guy who's still moonsaulting through tables off the top rope to the floor is changing his style too much, but... Well,
overall, I mean, not particularly one or two things of the psychology of how he wrestles, more the total package and product of what his character is, which includes pieces of that. Certainly some of his old style is going to be part of what he does now, because that's stuff that he does, just like Ric Flair is always going to do the Flair flop and the figure four.
Certainly puts a whole new spin on all those crosses he wore in '92, doesn't it?
The defining moment for me was when I actually went to WrestleMania 10, and that's where I saw the ladder match. I mean, phenomenal. I mean, you know, my father, who's not even a wrestling fan, watches it, and he's impressed by it. You know, everybody caught that match and was attached to it. So I think that was the defining moment of his career, the defining moment where I started believing in his character and started believing in what this guy could do. So that, to me, just as the match itself and, you know, the moment is together, I think, my favorite match and moment for him. You know, and then when he came back and I went and I saw the Elimination Chamber when he won the world title, that was just another great moment with the confetti going around and being in the arena, being a part of that.
Wearing stockings.
Well, he wrote the whole story on what happened. He forgot his gear, but it was still pretty. But still, it was, you know. But hey, you know, that's how you remember the match, right? He was wearing.
I actually made it to that one.
Yeah, you made it to that one. Oh, that's good. Yeah, overall, that was my moment. And again, the DX thing, started the Attitude Era with Stone Cold. It was just another part of the Attitude Era beginning. You know, there's a lot of great Shawn Michaels moments. There's, you know, too many probably. You know, and definitely the last one is definitely one of my favorites. With the final match that he had at WrestleMania, it was beyond good. But I don't agree with you, Eric. I don't think he's going to come back.
All right. Well, we'll place our bets later. Right now, we're going to go to 323 area code. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Name and location, please.
Caleb from Los Angeles.
Another LA call. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a big fan of the show.
Thank you very much. What's your question or comment?
All right, what do you think of Shawn Michaels' best WrestleMania match?
Well, we did get a lot of flack for not mentioning any Shawn Michaels matches in our best and worst of WrestleMania matches. And again, there's so many. I know a lot of people look towards the Kurt Angle match. Not sure if I'd go there myself. It's hard to pick one, but I guess if you put a gun to our heads, the Undertaker match this year is an easy answer. What do you guys think?
I don't know about the best. I'll tell you my favorite was Jericho and Shawn Michaels from 19. Just the beginning, just the whole build-up, the whole match, and even the ending where it looked like, you know, Jericho was going to give him all that respect, and then, boom, you know, pops him right in the one, shows how good of a bad guy he really was. Michaels made Jericho a better character that night.
Any more thoughts on your favorite Shawn Michaels moments or other matches?
As far as matches are concerned, the 1991 Royal Rumble with the Rockers versus the Orient Express.
Mm-hmm.
Even I'm sure half of our fan base was probably like 2 then, but what were we? I was 9 or something. Even when that age, I was like, wow, that was a pretty good match. And I just rewatched it a little while ago. I tell you, one of the things that made that match exciting was Rowdy Piper and his commentary. He was into that match as anybody else, and he brought you into it. But you gotta rewatch it.
A lot of those guys who were doing the commentary for like Superstars, for instance, around that time, Piper, Savage, you could tell their real enthusiasm for a lot of these matches. And they may have been trying to phase them out as the older generation and putting them in the commentary booth, but when you see Piper react to a match like that, or Savage the way he'd quote mark out, I guess, to Bret Hart and 1-2-3 Kid on Raw, you could tell their enthusiasm was genuine for these guys, their peers.
Absolutely. Maybe Jason can do us a favor and put that on his match of the week on the Roundtable Facebook show.
Sal, any input on Shawn Michaels?
Yeah, it's interesting that if you look at his original run and his current or recent run, if you time it from after he threw Marty Jannetty through the window, you know, his recent run actually was longer, and sure. I do have to give him credit. I think he really did kind of reinvent himself a little bit. Not that he totally changed his style, but you know, if you think back, he's not the same madman bumping around for everybody Shawn Michaels that he was in the 90s. So that's definitely a big change. I think his selling has gotten a little more realistic and less over the top as it was when he was younger. And he's definitely, as Lawrence was saying, definitely has changed his character. I mean, he toned down the DX dirty type of stuff and all that. And I don't know if I totally buy the Born Again deal, but he definitely has changed up. As far as his memorable matches, I kind of more agree with you, Eric. I think in 10, 15 years from now, the stuff I'm going to remember is from the first run.
Well, you know why you can tell that? Because when they did the video packages building up to these last couple Undertaker matches, well, especially this year with the career being on the line, what are most of the highlights from between 92 and 98?
Yeah, but that might be generational bias, too. I mean, there's a whole slew of fans, like Brett just made a joke about it, that are 2 when some of this stuff that was going on. They 2, 3, 4, 5. They might look back at Shawn Michaels and actually maybe they won't remember him fighting Rob Van Dam on Raw, but they may remember stuff like Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle and certainly the last 2 WrestleManias, and they may remember it as fondly, and I guess, or more fondly than the stuff we do. That's not to say our job is not to remind people of all the great stuff that he probably should be remembered by, but I do think a lot of that is generational bias, and we're just old and jaded.
Well, they don't cater to us anymore, so I think they want to focus on some of the more recent stuff. But continue, Sal.
That's possible. I mean, not to take anything away from the Kurt Angle match, the Chris Jericho matches, those were fantastic, phenomenal matches. But if I think back to the 90s, I mean, I really think I know WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart did a lot to make Steve Austin, but I think that the job that Shawn Michaels did putting him over at WrestleMania 14 was a big part of Steve Austin taking over that main event picture, and you definitely can't take away from him. That's a huge service that he did for the company and for Steve Austin. And,
absolutely, and I mentioned that on the show. What's interesting about that is, as you pointed out, Sal, that was the obvious passing of the torch moment and christening the Stone Cold Era has begun and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And, of course, the original plan was for that to be Bret's torch to pass. Didn't come to pass. But the other guy who was the parallel with Bret Hart in that whole new generation was Shawn Michaels. So he was an appropriate substitute, no doubt. But
when they gave Hulk Hogan the torch, they had Iron Sheik go out there for like 4 minutes. You know what? When the guy is that hot, with all due respect to Shawn Michaels and doing the service, you could have had Iron Sheik at 60 years old go out there and do that job, and Austin would have still been the biggest star ever. So I do not give Shawn Michaels or WWE any credit for that WrestleMania 14 matches. Always felt very strongly about that. You could have put anyone out there, and Austin winning the title would have been what people remember.
And I'm the angry one?
Look at who Hogan beat in '84, and what do people remember? They remember the Iron Sheik doing a good service to him, or do they remember the fact that it was time to put Hogan over and give him the belt? Not that your point's notwithstanding, but I think it's more the devil in the details than the bigger picture.
Well, maybe if he had beaten Sid, the point would still stand that, yeah, the big point is that Austin won the belt finally. But I don't think you should take away from the fact that Shawn Michaels went out there in such bad shape and put on his best ability to have a great match.
Real bad.
Well, there's only two people that could have done that, because you had Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. Everybody else was not really built enough to do something like that. So Shawn Michaels was the right choice, but I think I agree with Lawrence in the fact that it really wouldn't have mattered because Austin was too hot.
JBL put Cena over, for God's sake.
There you go. I mean, and it didn't matter, but it didn't matter, right? Because everyone knew John Cena was going to win that match, and it didn't matter who it was. And then the year after that, Triple H solidified John Cena as the top guy after taking the job for him.
I don't think anyone ever saw the match that San Martino went over in, so.
Has anybody else heard the story that I can't even fucking fathom? It's so ridiculous that even when he's got a herniated disc in his back and probably pilled up out of his mind, that Shawn Michaels was refusing to go out there and job to Austin until Undertaker pretty much threatened him. I heard
that I do believe.
I don't believe that whatsoever. That sounds like complete bullshit to me. Even with a back injury so bad he could barely walk. And
well, Eric, this is the same guy that post Born Again went on TV and went into business for himself and cut a promo on Hulk Hogan. So I don't think we can discount anything that people say against him at this point.
Eric, isn't it true also that he had never actually been pinned or submitted for losing a championship, like up until that match?
More or less. But along those lines, I wanted to correct something that I said on the show as well. I called the match that he had, speaking of goofy title situations, when he beat Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title in '95 at an In Your House, which was, of course, the title that he would eventually give up to Dean Douglas because he got beat up by a whole bunch of Marines. I call that match underrated, and I like to take that back. I like to say overlooked, because underrated, I don't think anybody who saw that match would say it was any less than great. So there's a difference between overlooked and underrated. So anyway, let's go to another call. Not Will Vafides, but Will from New Jersey. Hello, Will.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
I'll tell you what, I'm a little concerned because I'm pretty sure that my laptop is frying my nuts.
Oh, that sucks.
I swear I'm either going to be infertile or get cancer from this fucking thing, but...
Can I take over the host then if that happens?
We'll see if I win that better.
He said Will.
Did you guys let the man talk?
What?
Will from New Jersey, what are your thoughts on Shawn Michaels, or do you have another question or comment?
I want to talk about Shawn Michaels before I say that. I want you guys to know I bought my
announcement. I bought 2 front row tickets to see Pro Wrestling Respect, the 3rd show this week today. So
excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. We'll see you at the show.
Enjoy.
Yes, say hi.
I did the first time. The second show I was with a girl, and I really had I really couldn't just walk around without her. So I couldn't really do it. But
Yeah,
I
you don't want to do that around me.
They had a great bunch of matches, a series of matches together, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, that I feel, in the grand scheme of things, has been overlooked. Those matches were incredible, where they exchanged the Intercontinental belt back and forth, and they've been overlooked over the years.
They did on Raw, and those were good, but I think the last match that they had, at least that I remember, which was the Royal Rumble 93, really didn't live up to expectations.
Probably not, but they did have...
One at a time, please.
Jannetty's boring. Without Shawn Michaels, I don't want to see him fight anybody else because I don't care. And that's why Jannetty never made it.
That's blasphemy. You know that's blasphemy, my friend. Marty Jannetty is the patron saint of greatness and awesomeness and all that we know. And Eric knows that, and we all know that.
He said one of those barbershop glasses didn't slit his throat.
Speaking of how Shawn Michaels has changed his character over the years, I did want to mention, I don't know if he was just recovering from injury or what exactly the reasoning was, but when they started bringing in Diesel as more of a prominent star taking over from that bodyguard slot, and Shawn Michaels was more or less his manager or second at least in the background. Shawn Michaels, I could listen to talk all day. His promo work was really great around then, and I did say on the show it took him, I believe, a couple years to really hit his stride, because once he broke away from Marty Jannetty, yeah, the matches with Marty Jannetty were all right, and the match with Razor Ramon, but and the Rick Martel match at SummerSlam 92 was all right, but I don't think he really started hitting all cylinders and having those 5-star classics with guys until a few years in. I think Bret Hart got there faster, but maybe that's just my bias speaking. 718, you're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Your name and location.
Yeah, it's Matt from Staten Island.
Hey, Matt. What's your question or comment?
Oh, no, I was actually just going to comment on the great Shawn Michaels moments.
Go right ahead.
Well, actually, I have this VHS from, 1992, and it's a world tour. It's Shawn Michaels versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF title.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's taking place in Germany or something like that.
Cool. I think I've seen that too. Very cool.
Yeah, it's like an old Coliseum video. Seeing him there against Macho Man, I think he had a bum knee, Macho Man, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me think about the whole retirement thing, because Macho Man also retired at WrestleMania, kind of like the same way Macho Man retired and then came back real quick, pretty much. I think the same thing's gonna happen with Shawn Michaels, probably SummerSlam or maybe a little bit later.
Well, maybe we'll get a text message campaign from the guest GM on Raw to reinstate Shawn Michaels as a way to make it work.
Does anybody remember how Macho Man got reinstated on, I think it was Prime Time? I forgot the rhyme. It was 1, 2, 3, reinstate the Macho Man. It had signs and everything, and Bobby Heenan was going crazy. I don't think we're going to get that for Shawn Michaels.
Well, there are a lot of people who are into him, but we want to move on. He's no longer available, I guess, right now to be one of the three to pick the big three from. So the other topic we did on show number 43 was pick three from the big three. The scenario is that somehow in this magical fantasy situation is that you're a promoter, wrestling promoter, and you get to choose three wrestlers each from WWE, TNA, and ROH to build your promotion behind. So Chris, Jay, Rod, and myself gave our input, and we want to get some other panelists who did not appear on that show and get their input as well. Just so you're aware, the final tally, so to speak, it appears that Kurt Angle and Davey Richards are the MVPs of our video because they both appeared on all four of our picks. Kurt Angle and Davey Richards getting 4 picks each. So I guess Kurt Angle would be the TNA MVP and Davey Richards would be the ROH MVP. Also getting 3 picks each was John Cena, Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio, and Claudio Castagnoli. Third place, Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson or Bryan Daniel Bryan Danielson, as Ring of Honor calls him now. Him and Desmond Wolfe both got 2 picks each. And rounding it out, 1 pick each for Undertaker, Chris Hero, The Pope, Necro Butcher, Homicide, Jack Swagger, Jay and Mark Briscoe, Austin Aries, and Rob Van Dam. So let's see if there's any picks different here on the panel. So we'll go to Lawrence first. Lawrence, what are your 3 picks each and why?
I would select Orton, Cena, and The Miz from WWE. I would select AJ, Joe, and Angle from TNA. And I would select Claudio, Bobby Dempsey, and the Briscoes from Ring of Honor. And let me tell you why. And first of all...
That's 4, Lawrence. That's 4 from Ring of Honor.
I need a tag
Bobby
team in
Dempsey
here.
really counts as 2, so that's 5.
Fair enough. I should let you make that joke first.
I'm going to tell you said that.
So anyway, Orton, let me address Bobby Dempsey first. I think in any list like this, you have to think really outside the box at least one time for something that isn't safe. And as silly as it sounds, I've seen a little bit of Bobby Dempsey, not so much, but I see something there.
Actually,
that could
you've probably seen a lot.
I see something there that could be really big, and not literally, but figuratively. There's a little spark in that fella. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I'm not talking about just work rate or whatever. There's an it factor to him that is very much outside the box, and I think it's something that's a big throwback that could spark with a lot of people, and they might tune into it in 2010. That's very different from the cookie.
Do you think it's more of an everyman sort of thing?
I think it's a combination. I think the grandmas see him as their grandson. The fat dudes see him as themselves, and just wrestling fans and kids, they like guys like that. Is he a lovable oaf, or is he a lovable oaf that can actually go? I just, like I said, thinking outside the box, I want to pick at least one person that no one else would pick and say, I'm gonna take a shot with this guy and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Bobby. Now, Orton and Cena obviously are absolute safe picks. They're proven, and Orton is well on his way now to doing something special, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't think I need to justify them. They also can both work, talk, blah, 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 and I think there's a lot of, I always like to choose people in this kind of scenario that can work as a heel or face and have equal potential in both realms, and I think we have yet to see what the second half of Cena's career is going to be like, and I think it's going to be even more special than what we've seen so far.
Not to disparage your pick for Randy Orton, because it's not a bad choice. Everyone knows I don't like him, but it's not a bad choice at all. However, I did see some comments underneath the video when people were saying things like you were, that he's the future, and really after, 6 years at least of Randy Orton already winning the world title in 2004, so he's been around longer. How much more exactly are we going to see from him, at least as far as a diversity standpoint?
Well, Eric, I've changed my tune. I used to agree with you on that wholeheartedly, but I'm starting to realize that we live in a very different era where titles and exposure mean very different things, and I would argue that back in the day, almost every major star had 8 to 10 years experience before they really got their big run as NWA champion, or notwithstanding a lot of exceptions, but, people like Hulk Hogan were back and forth on the scene, heel face. People gave up on them, and then they finally hit a stride, and I think we're about to see Randy Orton, maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year, jump into that category. And I think we're in a different period where people can be on TV for 6 to 7 years. And somebody online had said that Cena is at the age now where he could go another 20 years. And a lot of people groan about that, but that's a fact. It's an undisputed fact that Cena might be on top for a lot longer. Now, I could be wrong. A lot of these guys might burn out really quick or go through movies like The Rock did. But point is, I think that both of those guys are safe, healthy bets. I wouldn't have said the same thing about Orton 2 or 3 years ago when he was getting into a lot of trouble, but I think he's turned a leaf. But I want to just kind of talk about some of the other people I selected. For TNA, I really think it's so hard to rate people now because of the way they're used and really get a feel for what they can do. That being said, I think that Kurt Angle, much like Cena and Orton, is a proven way to go. He can do a lot of things. If nothing else, guaranteed to have a great match and work a diverse style, and you need that. Joe, again...
before you get to Joe, even though
sure.
he was the MVP of our video session on this topic with all of us picking Kurt Angle, a lot of people did not when they were putting their own picks underneath in the comments section because they said he's just too injury prone and he's at the tail end of his career. Do you think that makes a difference?
I think you need a veteran or two when you're trying to build something new, and I think Cena's a veteran, but Angle's a different kind of veteran as far as how he could mentor people in the ring, and I just think he would fill the role of the old grizzled guy on the roster that could show the young guys a lot, but also go out and have great matches. And I think every promotion has had the good hand, the proverbial guy who can always go out there and do the right thing. Then I think Angle is that, but there's so much more upside to him besides the fact that he would be the Bobby Eaton of this 9-man promotion. So I think Angle's another safe bet to have. The Briscoes, I again need a tag team, but I'm cheating here a little bit. But I do see a combination. I see a combination of Steve Austin and the Hardys as far as how the fans react to them, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to see them interact with people like Cena and Orton and work interesting matches. Joe, again, you need somebody on there that's going to be your dominating force, your Undertaker or your Vader or whatever, your big guy who's unstoppable monster, and I think Joe is as safe a bet as anyone. They've booked him that way in Ring of Honor and TNA. He's been unbelievably over. When they've chosen not to book him that way, he's not been, and so it doesn't matter if it's Taz or The Undertaker. If you make somebody unbeatable, people will usually buy it and buy T-shirts and buy merchandise. And it so happens that Samoa Joe is an unbelievable worker. And to use a cliche, he can definitely go and definitely deliver against any of the people that I mentioned.
262 area code. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Name and location, please.
Hey, this is Justin Dawson from Eagle, Wisconsin. I thought I'd just list my 9 picks.
Go right ahead.
All right, for WWE, I'd be picking CM Punk, Daniel Bryanson, and John Morrison. Punk, I could probably use him as my main face. As good as he is as a heel, he got pretty good reaction as the face. I can see him building it like a big straight-edge face faction. Like, teens, they hate peer pressure. They hate being forced to do drugs and all that. He could probably appeal to them. And, I don't get why the crowd is booing him. Are they, cheering in favor of, having drugs and alcohol? It's ridiculous.
You got it.
There's nothing wrong with alcohol.
I know, I felt it this weekend.
Daniel Bryanson, he just appeared very arrogant when he was trying to cut a promo on NXT. He did poorly, but he just seemed very arrogant, and I've heard he makes a great heel, which he's going to make a great tag team with one of my other picks. Morrison, he's like this crazy mix between Jeff Hardy and John Cena.
How do you get John Cena from that?
I think that Daniel Bryanson is a combination of Kurt Angle-Smith and Samoa Johnson. That's my thought.
Well, after tonight, he may just be going back to Bryan Danielson and dropping this stupid name altogether, but we'll see what goes on from there. Your TNA picks, Justin?
The Motor City Machine Guns, they're essential as a tag team, but people forget how good Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley are in singles competition.
I actually don't. I think I prefer them in singles, and people are really, really, really into this tag team, and that's great. I love that people are that into a tag team in 2010, but I think I prefer them as singles, at least Alex Shelley.
Who's your third pick?
Raven. He's got a few years left in him, a little bit of wrestling, but I intend to use him as sort of the heel manager, like the guy working behind the scenes.
That's awesome. I like that point because, whatever you think of Raven, did anybody pick somebody who's not a wrestler to build around,
He could be like the James Mitchell or like the Eric Bischoff. Scary.
Yeah, that is a scary thought, but I like it.
Or he could just be their drug dealer. So for Ring of Honor, who are your picks?
Same as everyone else as far as Davey Richards is concerned. Have him be like the silent face type, maybe build him up to be like the bigger, better, sort of smaller Bill Goldberg style. If he's going to be my top face, I'm thinking like bring up a mirror image to be like the top heel, and the other half to my tag team with Bryan Danielson and Roderick Strong. Both of them can play like the arrogant, better than everyone else wrestlers. And both of them have the skills to bring it, and I think they make a great tag team together. I'm definitely going to go against the grain here, Sarah Del Rey.
All right.
I think I could see her as being in like the next China-ish type of role. Maybe not as powerful, but better grappler, better striker, and the fans can get behind her. Like mostly female fans and some guys. So like they'll be rooting for her to like finally win in this world that's dominated by the guys. I think she can probably go with most of the guys.
Sarah Del Rey is one of the good indie women wrestlers left, and she's not a bad choice at all. The match she had with Awesome Kong this Saturday in Manhattan Center was probably the best women's match in Ring of Honor history. Doesn't say much, but that one was actually genuinely good in and of itself, so she's not a bad choice. So thank you, Justin, for giving us your picks. All right, well, let's go to you then. Who are your 9 wrestlers that you're picking?
First off, John Cena, because forget it. If I want to make money, I need John Cena. I don't care what anybody says. I want to make money, okay? 2, CM Punk, because he's got one of the best heel factions going on right now. I would take the whole straight society gimmick and move that over. You have to. We need stables in pro wrestling. It brings like the company and splits up like the brand. I have this group of guys that everyone hates, and it's good to have that. And I would also pick The Miz because you need like a intercontinental U.S. division, and he'd be the perfect guy for that. So that's why I would choose him. TNA-wise, I would definitely choose Jeff Hardy. Again, he's just like Cena. He can draw. People will come see him. Yeah, he can smoke. He can do whatever he wants to do, but he sells.
You're dependent on him being not in jail in a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The case is that if he was in that kind of position, I might not even hire him. But, just based on if he didn't have this jail thing going on in his life, I think he would have done a lot better. Samoa Joe, make him a heel because he's the perfect heel wrestler, I think. It works perfectly for him, his attitude. Just look at his face. His face. Do you see any, smiling coming from that guy's face at all? Does that, sell you and say, hey, this guy's a face of the company? I don't. I would make him, the perfect heel. And I'm a huge fan, but I like Mr. Anderson. He has good vocal skills, and I still think he's a good wrestler, despite what some people may think.
That's some people being me.
Yes, that's exactly right. For ROH, huge fan of Delirious. I think his gimmick is really funny. It's entertaining. Definitely people would have a great time, with seeing someone like him.
You think there's untapped potential there for appealing to a more children demographic?
Well, here's the thing. You got guys like Rey Mysterio who can pull it off. Here's another masked wrestler who, again, is he can relate to kids, That's the thing. He can really relate to really anybody's age, So he can relate, just like Mysterio. People love Mysterio. As far as our age category, he's a great wrestler. And as for kids, it's someone to look up to because he's their height, and it works out. And Delirious, to me, is like a strange character. You don't know much about him, but he brings a little humor and also a lot of, people get really into the match. My ROH guys would be the Briscoes. You need a tag team that's strong, that gets over, that really people, buy into. And that's the one, tag team, besides a couple other ones that are out there left that can really bring good tag team wrestling. And you need to have that. So every division's got to be covered, heavyweight, the mid-card, and the tag. And, that's why I would pick my picks.
Briscoes seem to be a popular pick. Let's see if that trend continues, because we're going to go to Brett now. Brett?
I will start with ROH. And you know what, Lawrence? You have you've inspired me to do outside of the box. I made some corrections with your Bobby Dempsey pick. I'm not going to pick him, but here we go. First one, Kenny King, that black guy.
That black guy.
I watched a couple things about it. He's got a good presence to him. I think he could be like a star. He's got that ego and he can wrestle too, which is secondary, but he's got a good ego to him. I like him.
I love how wrestling is secondary in wrestling. Go ahead.
I'm going to take a check here. I'm going to go with Mischief. She's a great heel women's wrestler, and frankly, she scares the crap out of me, and I kind of like that. And as long as we're talking about evil people, one of the biggest pricks in wrestling that pulls it off quite well is Mr. Shane Hagedorn. Every time he speaks, you just want to smack him. So maybe not in a wrestling sense, but maybe a manager or a general manager sense.
Or a real life sense if you know him, but that's another story.
Let's go to TNA. I'll pick Joe because basically he reminds me as much of Taz as anybody else in the business right now.
He also has a scary face.
I told you he's got a scary face, man.
He's like a Halloween. He's like a walking Halloween mask. That's Samoa Joe.
It's
By reminding you of Taz, I thought you meant Fat and Brown.
Oh God.
That's not right. That wasn't okay. Speaking of Brown, Jay Lethal is another pick I would take. Basically, straight off of his Macho Man and the Ric Flair thing sold me last week. The guy's funny. I got to give it to him. He made me laugh.
He brought that up on the message board, and that segment was so good with Ric Flair. I got butterflies watching that segment. It felt like this was finally going to be a real star-making moment, because you knew this whole Black Machismo thing really wasn't going to lead to him finally doing something with the real Macho Man. But this Flair impression, which we'd never heard before, was not only dead on. Flair himself was really good in that segment, and even all the stupid shit like Abyss and the red and yellow crap, even all the baby faces coming out to make the save, and what looked like Flair's new horseman in TNA, I thought all that really worked, and hopefully it'll lead to something for Jay Lethal. But what's your last TNA pick?
My last TNA pick is the leader of the greatest thing, not in wrestling, but on television, Velvet Sky and the Beautiful People.
Mm-hmm.
That's self-explanatory. I'm in love with Velvet Sky. I would put the proposal out right now. If she's listening, if she ever does one day, I love you. We'll be together one day, and I'll see you on the other side.
Another promoter sleeping with his people, man.
we don't even have a promotion yet, and it's already happening. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, the thing they've been doing with Daphne and the Beautiful People, you could essentially get the same sort of dynamic with Mischief.
Yes, I know where I'm going with this.
I don't think that's the dynamic he's going for, Eric. I think he's going for more like the Italian Stallion meets Barbie kind of dynamic.
Like half the roster hasn't beaten him to it. So what's your WWE picks?
I'll start with the veteran. My veteran will be Jericho. He's your Iron Man. Like he said, he doesn't go out. He'll do anything you need. He can be a mid-carder. He can be a tag team. He can be a main eventer. He is the best in the world at what he does.
He's a company man, too.
Yes, he is a company man. Ted DiBiase. I look forward to seeing what he's going to do with the $1 million belt and that type of storyline every week. My last pick is Mr. Dolph Ziggler. The man reminds me of Kurt Hennig. He reminds me of Mr. Perfect. And with the right, maybe he needs a manager, he needs some guidance, but I think he can go places.
Well, we're going to go to another call, 416. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Is this Grammage?
Yes, indeed it is. Just commenting with the sort of pick three type stuff. Yes, it largely, like I say, I've got mine up on the message board, but a lot of the stuff I agree with. Main sort of, one thing was mentioned was the authority figure type roles, and I actually think that's a big advantage to Chris Jericho in terms of, because I went younger whenever I could, but the ultimate advantage of Chris Jericho is even if he can only go for a few more years, he would transition so seamlessly to an authority figure. He would, like, there's nothing that guy can't do.
Can't make Eric happy, I know that much.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Monday Night Jericho made me very happy.
Yeah, and then from there, I like going sort of outside of the big three for some of the other guys. Like the big one, now this is technically an ROH pick, but someone mentioned wanting to put a guy in a Goldberg-like streak. The guy I'd want to do that with in North America is Kenta once he gets healthy.
That's a Noah pick.
I put it as a Noah pick. If you wanted to, get technical and make me lose an ROH pick, that'd be fine.
Well, I
but
think
just
he's going to be showing up in ROH again anytime soon, but go ahead.
Yeah, but just this silent killer, man. Like, he could just come in and destroy people. And, like, that would get over so quick if you had that new promotion. And what I think would be an interesting thing for a new promotion to do is to sort of Dragon Gate style, bring in people internationally, make it look like you don't know where the guy's coming from, literally, because you don't know where he's flying in from to kick your ass.
Well, you would think for a company that calls themselves World Wrestling Entertainment, they would be a little more worldly and bring in perhaps someone like that. But we've talked about that sort of thing actually on the show before. And the first season, Can Foreigners Get Over in America, which is available on iTunes and YouTube as well. But we want to move on to the last panelist, Sal, for the pick 3 from the Big 3. And what are your picks, Sal?
Well, starting out just talking about making money. Start with WWE. You got to take John Cena, the guy that sells merchandise like no other. And he's, face of the company type of guy, mega babyface. Following up with that, I would take Rey Mysterio. He, just like Cena, big-time babyface, probably, I think, the most sympathetic babyface role in wrestling right now. And then with the merchandise, with the masks and the kids, and also he obviously fulfills a certain demographic that is big in this country.
Leave short people alone. I know where you're going with that.
Yeah. And then speaking of short people, my third pick will be Chris Jericho because he, kidding aside, he totally can do anything. He's probably, I would say, the most reliable guy. Any role you stick him out therein, he can fulfill. He's just that plays that arrogant, hateable heel better than anybody else, I think. And a great talker on top of that. From TNA, I will not go with Kurt Angle because I'm looking for guys that are reliable and he's too much of a pillhead for my taste. So we'll go with Samoa Joe. He'll kind of be my monster babyface type of character, and he definitely knows how to put a match together. I've seen many of his matches live, and just a no-brainer pick for me. AJ Styles, another guy that could be a super over babyface, especially with women and a younger crowd, and he's kind of like the high flyer in addition to Rey Mysterio. And then my third pick from TNA actually would be Abyss. I think the last couple of years, and especially with the Hogan stuff now, he's been booked so cartoony and horribly, and it makes people forget how good he was at the monster heel role, and that's kind of what I would want him to fulfill.
That's so absolutely true, because I was a big Abyss fan a few years ago. I saw him wrestle in person many times, and yeah, he did do a lot more of this hardcore stuff to the point where it just became routine and kind of took away from it, but people were also super into him back then. If you remember a few years ago when he fought Sting for the world title, Sting was, of course, the face, but people were cheering for Abyss to win. And he seemed like a very skilled, agile big man that could bring a lot to the table. And it's so sad to see the way he is now in this super fucking lame, not even more Kane-looking, just stupid character. I don't like it at all.
Exactly.
It's a shame because that's one character that I could see being the biggest heel in that company, and he has the movement and everything to really be like the guy. And the fact that what he's doing right now, it's really, really a shame because, man, that guy has some talent for a big guy.
Hulk Hogan, the whole thing was, I'm going to make Abyss my John Cena. He said that, but yet we're all saying this, but yet he's completely doing it the wrong way by trying to make Abyss into John Cena.
A retarded John Cena, maybe. But your other pick, Sal?
Yeah, and then for Ring of Honor, my three guys, first will be Chris Hero. I think he has developed extremely well over the past couple of years. I remember thinking back before he came into Ring of Honor, I had seen some of his stuff and just really never got that into him. I didn't think that he was that much of a talker. He had a horrible look, and his moveset was just kind of blah to me. But he's really developed his personality with the sweet and sour stuff in Ring of Honor, and then the young knockout kid gimmick. He's really coming to his own and found his niche, I think. He's been getting in the gym. He looks like a credible wrestler now, and he just has lots of personality, and I really like the striking style. I think it's really believable. So I'd love to have him. Kenny King, as Brett mentioned, just this guy just drips personality, I think. Just an amazing personality, amazing talker, pretty good, solid in the ring. And one of the old things about how to be a good heel is, you know, the heel comes out first before the babyface, and by the time the babyface's music hits, the heel should have gotten the crowd so riled up to see him get his ass kicked that the babyface should just not even have to really do that much at all to get the crowd behind them. And Kenny King, to me, is really that kind of a heel, just like an annoying, like smug kind of guy.
I'm a big supporter of Kenny King. I see big star potential there with him. I see, like you said, a great talker, a great swagger, lots of charisma, and he's got it in the ring as well. I think that there's something missing, though. I think he needs to get over just that little hump to be able to deliver a true main event worthy match, but he's on his way, I think.
Absolutely. My last guy is going to be Kevin Steen. He has one negative to me, and that's just his look. Now, if anybody could think back to 3-4 years ago and what he used to look like when he was mostly wrestling on the West Coast, he definitely looked like more of a wrestler in terms of just his physique and everything like that. But to be honest, you know, he could always lose that weight, but a lot of guys that are out there just aren't that good, and they'll probably never be better than they are. So in terms of that, even at his size right now, he can move around extremely well. He's actually, out of everybody I mentioned, the youngest guy, believe it or not. So he's got a lot of years left, and he just his personality. He can do the comedy stuff as a babyface, and yet the strong heels that I mentioned, Chris Jericho, Chris Hero, you know, he, I think more than anybody else, can play that prick, dickhead heel role better than anybody else right now. Just his stuff with Karina right now is fantastic, I think, and he's just such an asshole. And you really just want to have somebody like that to get the fans riled up and really buy into the babyface. So he rounds out my 9, Kevin Steen.
He can be a great heel. I like the stuff when he'll, for instance, grab the shoe off of someone in the crowd and then use it on the wrestler and then throw it over the curtain and make him go get it, like Biff in Back to the Future.
Right.
But on the other hand, he does kind of skirt the line there when he does stuff that may be too funny, ha-ha. And that, of course, is going to get the fans into him as, like, Steen is awesome sort of stuff, as opposed to the heel heat that he probably should be getting.
Just a little guidance, I think, and we have to remember, like I said, I mean, he's in his, I believe he's in his mid-20s, so he's got time to learn and, you know, really grow into that heel role because he has been playing a babyface the last few years. So it's definitely something he can work on and get better at, I think.
We're going to welcome Rodney LeConte to the panel, bringing you on to talk about UFC 113 that happened this past Saturday. But before that, we want to mention that you've got a short film, My Time, coming out. Tell us a little about that.
Well, My Time is it's a short film about a girl who reflects on her life and all her choices that she made, and basically just wants to see if it was all worth it at the end. So far, it's screened at the New Filmmakers New York Film Festival, and this will be the lead-in film to my documentary Grappling Kings that will be premiering hopefully later on in the summer, early fall.
Oh, good for you!
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, it's getting into the festival circuit right now.
You want to find out more about Rodney LeConte and his films, RodneyLeConteFilms.com. And we want to talk about the big event that happened this past Saturday, presented by Zuffa, UFC 113 out of Quebec. Lots of big stories coming out of that night. And, of course, starting off, it would be Kimbo Slice losing to Matt Mitrione in the second round by ref stoppage. And it seems as if after only 2 fights, Kimbo is going to be cut by UFC. Kimbo did not look good in the second round at all. In the first round, he showed some signs of life, but it looked like he was showing some kinks in his armor. And unlike the Houston Alexander fight where he was extremely cautious, and in the second round of that fight showed massive improvement on the ground, in this fight, Kimbo had his legs taken out from him, if not in the end of the first round, definitely in the second round by Matt Mitrione, and he had nothing after that. On the ground, he was sucking wind. He couldn't do a thing. It was rather sad looking. However, I don't necessarily agree with cutting him after only 1 loss. 2 fights in, I think he should have been given at least one other shot. What do you guys think of this? Sal?
Well, I don't know. I kind of think he has had his shot. I was a little surprised how well he performed against Houston Alexander. But even from the beginning, seeing him on Ultimate Fighter, and how he did on there and everything, I don't know that he's ever really made that transition from the kind of underground street fighter brawler to legit fighter. He's definitely, obviously he's improved, but he's in there with guys that have been doing this for so long, and he just doesn't seem to really have the aptitude for it. We're really seeing the real Kimbo Slice, and they just decided they're not going to make money with this guy in the long run, and it's time to pull the plug.
I think Kimbo is a draw, and it'll be interesting to see the buy rate from this pay-per-view back, because he did such big numbers on TV when he was on not just Elite XC, but also the Ultimate Fighter finale back in December or so. But he did look like he improved on the ground, at least in the second round of the Houston Alexander fight, but not this one. It seemed to be reverting back to the Kimbo we saw before that really didn't have too much outside of stand-up, or, well, not even stand-up boxing. Your take, Will?
He had a lot of buzz. That was probably the biggest thing. That's why the Ultimate Fighter heavyweight show was probably the biggest hit, was for the fact that he was on it. He won the Houston Alexander fight, and Houston Alexander, again, is a striker. Surprised he didn't take him to the ground that much in that fight. But again, Kimbo won. Losing this fight definitely hurts him as a fighter. I definitely think he needed to win. I don't agree with cutting him as soon as I actually agree with Eric on this one. I don't think cutting him was the right idea. He's kind of 1 for 1. Let him have one more fight. If he loses that fight, then yeah, I would say cut him. Because obviously there's not much happening. That means it's like he kind of got lucky. But overall, yeah, Kimbo will probably have to find some other means of doing fighting. I just don't think UFC is the right place for him right now. He has to improve his ground game.
Needless to say, Strikeforce would probably sign him up in a second, but usually it's 2 losses in a row before UFC cuts you. Your analysis of the fight, Rod?
Well, the Houston Alexander fight, yeah, Kimbo won, but it wasn't in Kimbo fashion. It wasn't the kind of fight that everyone is expecting. And in this fight, you gotta look at it both sides of the fence. Yes, Kimbo is a draw, but then when I stated, he's not after the freak show fights. And with this fight, they gave him a very fair fight. They gave him a guy who's 1-0 and that likes to stand up. And Kimbo did not look good at all. It was almost reminiscent of the Matt Hughes Renzo Gracie fight, where it's just a matter of time. And he was winded by the second round, and he just looked like he really didn't belong to hang in there with the big boys. What else can you throw at him that's not going to be an obvious tomato can? And I think once they do that, I think they'll be really going back on the word about how criticizing the Elite XC and how they just feed Kimbo these cans and claim that Kimbo is the best. They gave him a guy who's 1-0, a former NFL player who's a little over 30 years of age, So, they didn't give him any of their experienced fighters. So, and Kimbo didn't even put up a good fight. If it would have went all 3 rounds, maybe if he lost by split decision, then it would have been a different story. But the fact is that Kimbo didn't look that great out there.
So you agree with cutting him?
Yeah, I could see Dennis Point cutting him. I mean, you might as well cut him before it gets even any worse.
Well, the way I could see it getting worse is some people were saying that he should cut weight to light heavyweight. Are you fucking kidding me? He would get destroyed in the light heavyweight division.
Absolutely. Even Houston Alexander, he took to a decision. It's like Rod said, it's not like it was decisive. And then people, I don't know if it's because it wasn't a UFC fight, but people forget, what was it? He got knocked out in 14 seconds by Seth Petrozelli. Yeah, I mean, he really hasn't looked that great, I don't think, in his last 3 fights.
And Seth Petrozelli, the guy's not even the top 15 heavyweight. He was a guy who was a last-minute replacement for Shamrock, who was a Ultimate Fighter reject. So, and Seth Petrozelli would get killed by any of the top 10 heavyweights in the UFC.
Exactly.
Doesn't speak well on Kimbo, I suppose, but I would have given him one last shot, maybe, but I could see why he would get cut. But speaking of seeing why you can get cut, Paul Daly punching Josh Koscheck after their welterweight decision. Wow. In light of the Strikeforce brawl in Nashville, this is the last thing UFC would want. Probably why they didn't put George St. Pierre in the cage afterwards to get the face-to-face. But it appears Josh Koscheck will now challenge George St. Pierre, GSP, for the welterweight title after they coach the next season of Ultimate Fighter. Is this the fight that you were looking forward to, or are we more leaning towards that fight with Anderson Silva that popped back up again during the Abu Dhabi show?
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to see the Anderson Silva fight, but I think there's at least 2 more fights on middleweight that UFC wants to see first. But the welterweight division is still stacked, and with Koscheck, the way that he got the Montreal crowd heated up, I think it really was a good doing on his part for seeing everyone want to see GSP kick his ass.
Sal, Dana White said that Paul Daly will never, ever be back in UFC again. Right call?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the heel antics more than anything, but antics are one thing,
and then being a dick.
Yeah, exactly. Like Mayhem Miller running into the cage and acting a fool. That's entertainment, but the sucker punch, that's just not okay. There's really no place for that.
Low class.
I don't know what the deal is with his license, or if they're going to suspend that or what, but
that's being investigated by the Quebec Athletic Commission right now.
It's just not okay, I don't think. I think that was the right move.
I think that they should have suspended him instead of cut him. I think that might have been just a little too harsh because, I mean, yeah, that happens in the longer reigning sports like basketball, boxing, and football. Stuff like that happens all the time. I think cutting him was maybe just so Dana White could kind of set an example to try to tell Strikeforce, like, hey, you guys could let people fight, but, we're not going to take it, just to show them that they're a superior brand. I think it was more of that because, and it was a reaction that Paul Daly had towards Dana because Dana mentioned he went into the cage after him and asked him, hey, what's your problem? You still want to fight in the UFC? Paul Daly just looked at him and turned his shoulder. So I think that right there was a career killer for Paul Daly.
I like it. I like the zero tolerance. You mentioned the other sports, and so how many times do we see guys get suspended for a few games? They get a fine. And what's a $1 million fine to a guy who's making $15 million a year? And not that these fighters are making that, but I have no problem with the zero tolerance policy. I think it sets a good example for everyone else.
Will Dana White has said to Anderson Silva that if he gets past Shonen or however you pronounce his name, and Vitor Belfort, that he wants Anderson Silva to vacate his middleweight title and move up to light heavyweight. Do you want to see Anderson Silva in GSP, or should GSP be going full speed ahead against Koscheck?
As long as Silva doesn't do anything stupid again, I would like to see that fight. I honestly don't know if it's actually going to happen, personally, but, Silva's too hot right now to kind of like take on GSP, and plus with Koscheck, I don't know. I don't know if he's the right guy to face him. I mean, he definitely deserves a shot, but I just don't think GSP is going to probably beat him. But back with Daly, he doesn't need like stuff like that. Like with Lesnar, he tolerated that, but when you sucker punch a guy, that's not right. I think that was the right call. But as far as Silva and GSP, I just don't think we're going to see it as long as Silva keeps his attitude checked.
Doesn't look like that fight's going to happen, but the fight that did happen was the rematch between Shogun Rua and Lyoto Machida for the light heavyweight title. The rematch, someone asked me my pick the day before it happened, and I said, Rua, because he won the first one. I'm usually pretty good at scoring fights, boxing, MMA, and you remember watching that, Rod? How ridiculous that was?
Oh, yeah. It's a wrong decision. I mean, people could say, oh, it's the commentators that, sway people, that was Shoguns, but, the crowd reacted the same way they hear the commentators. So I
Bullshit.
think
We couldn't even hear the commentary where we were.
Hey, exactly. And this time, Shogun didn't leave it up to the judges.
No kidding. You could tell that both men, I believe, went into this fight very prepared. You could see that Machida was avoiding and checking those leg kicks that Shogun was throwing this time. But Mauricio, I think, was very dead set on not leaving it to the judges also. And Machida didn't see that right hook coming, and bam! First round. Not only did Machida lose the title, first person to beat Lyoto Machida, I don't think we would have expected it to be so thorough in the first round. What's your thoughts on the fight, Sal?
I have to say I'm kind of surprised because Machida's coming off wins over
everybody.
Tito, Thiago Silva, Rashad. And Shogun, I mean, he had the loss to Forrest Griffin, and then he beat Coleman and Liddell, who they're not exactly in their prime. So I'm not going to lie. I thought I was surprised that B.J. Penn lost his belt, but I thought other than that, Machida was probably the last guy that was going to, out of the remaining title holders, that was going to lose his belt this soon, and especially to Shogun. So props to Shogun. I think this is probably the best he's looked since he's come over to the UFC. So good for him, but I wasn't expecting it.
This fight just proves just how dangerous and lethal the light heavyweight division. Because in the last year and a half, we saw 3 top 10, even say top 5 light heavyweights who were previously undefeated get knocked out cold within the first or second round. And that's Thiago Silva, Rashad Evans, and now Lyoto Machida. And Shogun just, showed up everyone that how short the Machida era could be, and that the Shogun era, which started last year in Montreal with his knockout over Chuck Liddell, he is continuing winning the belt, and I just think it was a perfect game plan. He didn't really use as many kicks as he did the first fight, which kind of threw Machida off, and he's really, really good. Machida took him down a few times. Shogun got right back up and kept it on the feet, and that's where he ended it.
It's been said that Rua's first title defense is going to be against the winner of the Quinton Rampage Jackson Rashad Evans fight. You looking forward to that one, Will?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm looking forward to Jackson, and that's going to be a great fight. It's a great card. It's a card that you got to watch. It's not like you can't wait a day, after to see that. Have we seen that before? I don't think Rua's ever faced any one of them before.
Yeah, Shogun is actually the last person to beat Rampage before Rampage came to UFC. And it was knocked him out pretty brutally.
So it'll be
like
the first time in a cage.
Cool.
All right, enough talking over each other for one night. I think we're going to wrap that up here on Wrestling Roundtable Radio. And before we go, want to give some acknowledgments because I've met a lot of fans in person over the past couple months or so, and wanted to say hello to Joe and Marvin in Detroit, Chris in Phoenix, Stan from Switzerland, who I met out in Phoenix, Taylor and Kenny Murphy from Charlotte, and in New York City, Peter, Jose, David, William, and Matt. Next week, trying to get our first special guest lined up. If it all goes according to plan, not 100% certain yet, but we're trying to get Dan the Beast Severn on. First special guest for Wrestling Roundtable Radio. I want to thank everyone who called in today. And don't forget to check out WrestlingRoundtable.com. You can get the links to all our different websites, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, Go Fight Live, and iTunes. There's lots of different ways to listen to Wrestling Roundtable, On YouTube, of course, it's divided into segments by topic. Go Fight Live has the full shows, and iTunes has the full show as well in audio form. And you can have a lot of fun on WrestlingRoundtable.com, interacting and reading from different fans as well. A lot of different options for you there. Polls, chat rooms, message boards, columns, articles, news, lots of stuff on WrestlingRoundtable.com, and we would wish you that you support the show by getting the Wrestling Roundtable t-shirt or getting tickets or DVDs of Pro Wrestling Respect. Next show coming up on June 6th, Sunday in Burlington, New Jersey. So for the panel, Lawrence Haber, Rodney LeConte, Brett Simonello, Will Vafides, Sal Rendazzo, I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us next week.